All right. So, welcome to the week 2 live lecture. Um, in this week, I'm going to go over the quiz answers for quiz 1 and 2. I more so want to go quiz 2. That's those are the ones that's the one I made. Um, and then I can also answer questions about that you might have for this week's work. Uh, if you are here, hopefully you watched at least the lectures 1 and 2 for week 1, part 1, part 2. And if you're watching the recording, hopefully you watched the previous lectures, so that way, any questions that these people ask, you'll have some sort of context to. So let's see. I'm going to pull up the quizzes and we can take a look at them. And then at any point y'all have a question, be sure to just say it. I'm probably going to ask you some questions, and y'all can just say the answers, or you can offer something up. Okay. For these quizzes, I'm just going to the answers are already here, and so if you have a question on why it's the answer, you should ask that. Okay. So MLA formatting and documentation. Our first question was the purpose of a parenthetical citation is to acknowledge the works of others in the text and to use it to find more information about the source in the works cited entry. Well, I mean, that one's obviously true. Like, that one is literally the whole point of it. And I did often have students who would put the works cited, they would put their sources on the works cited page in order of where they appeared in their paper. Even though I've not really gone over yet in this class works cited page organization, but I have briefly talked about it though, in terms of it being alphabetical. And to me, I logically understand why they think that way. Like, oh, if my first source is by John Williams, I'm gonna put that first in my works cited page, so with that way, when the person's reading it, they can flip to it and they can see it first. But that's just not technically how you do it. You typically do it in alphabetical order, so you can more easily navigate the works cited page. Question 2. Sorry, I got an airplane going over. A parenthetical citation is required after quotes and paraphrases, and that is true as well. Paraphrases. So, a paraphrase is just when you take someone else's idea and you reword it. Okay. Now, for this class, I really want us to mostly focus just on quotes because in the past, when I've said things like, "Oh, you can paraphrase in your paper and you can cite us and you can put your citation in," right? Um, then just students just started only paraphrasing because they were like, "I'm getting integrating the quotes wrong, so I'm just going to stop integrating quotes and only paraphrase." And that was a problem because integrating quotes is a skill that you need to develop. So I personally, while you can paraphrase, you still have to have your specific number of quotes directly integrated into your paper. So you still have to have, I think I had like four quotes from your secondary sources. Whatever I state in each of the papers, you're still required to have. Now, any additional information that you want to add after those, besides those direct quotes, and just through the form of paraphrases, is fine. You just need to make sure that you can still put a parenthetical citation after. And do we understand what I mean by paraphrase? It just means to say it in your own words, it's kind of like to summarize it. It's just to rephrase it. Paraphrase really just means rephrase. MLA formatting involves the following. And so here we have 1-inch margins, which when you open up a standard Microsoft Works page, it's already set for you, so you don't really have to worry about that. Indentification, not identification, but indent. There were people who on some of your Samantha Irby assignments, you are not indenting the first line of your paragraphs. And so we got to indent so therefore we know when a new paragraph begins. A header, title, paragraph indent, there it is. Double spacing, font, 12, all that kind of stuff. Oh, identification, meaning as in all the things that your name, my name, the class, and the date. All that stuff goes there. MLA formatting requires double spacing twice between paragraphs. Ooh, big time fault. People are doing that. People are putting. So people get confused is that there is business formatting and then there is MLA formatting. Business formatting is in the business world, they tend to not indent paragraphs, but they have multiple spaces between paragraphs because it kind of resembles writing an email. Writing an email, we have block paragraphs. We don't indent. If you hit tab in an email, then it actually sends it to a different command on the web page, and so tab doesn't work in an email. So instead, we have block paragraphs where we don't indent, we just have a paragraph, and then we have a double space between our paragraphs. And then that also falls over into the business world, where in business formatting, they tend to just use block paragraphs. For English, the social sciences, we are the literary arts, we use MLA. And in that, we don't double space between paragraphs. We indicate a new paragraph by indenting. So this has been, for some people, this is a hard transition for them to move, especially for people who we have like different careers, people who are moving from one business to another industry. For whatever reason, they want to they want to like multiple space between paragraphs and not indent. And so with MLA formatting, this is what we do. If the author is stated in the signal phrase, choose the correct parenthetical citation. Okay. So there were a lot of people on the Samantha Irby assignment that I graded where people were saying Irby's name in the sentence and then they were including Irby's name in the parenthetical citation. Okay. And so you lost points for that. B is correct because Wordsworth's name is mentioned in what we call the signal phrase. Therefore, it does not appear in the citation. It's only once. Wordsworth, A is wrong because it has Wordsworth and Wordsworth. D is wrong, again, because it's Wordsworth and Wordsworth. D is wrong because we have this PG. Don't put PGs in your citations. No PG. Question 6. Two authors have the same last name. Choose the answer with the correct parenthetical citation. I never really went over this, but I did include this in our note in the study guide. So hopefully you looked at the study guide. And by the study guide, I just meant I have pretty much all the questions, so you can go out and do the research on yourself on your own. And so this tells us that you have the first initial and the period. Okay. The question 7. The page number used in the parenthetical citation needs to be an original page number and not a printer generated one. That's true if it's provided. If it's provided. If it's not provided, then you can use the printer one. If it's a PDF that is a self-created PDF. So like, where are you going? Where have you been? Oh, that's not the actual story. That's a PowerPoint. So if I upload a PDF copy of a story and it's not a photocopy of the book, like, oh, I have this book right here. Like this book, if I made a photocopy of this book, then it would have page numbers at the top, and so you'd use these page numbers. If I typed the story, if I copied it from a website where it just has the story, and I put it into a PDF, and there are no official page numbers, then you would use the PDF page numbers. So actual real page numbers take precedent over printer page numbers. Question 8. The end punctuation mark is inserted before the parenthetical citation. There's a lot of people. Oh, the sun's moved. Sorry. Um, there's a lot of people in the Samantha Irby assignment who were doing this incorrectly. They were ending their sentence in the quote and then having a parenthetical citation after the period and the quotation mark. And that is incorrect. All end punctuation goes after the parenthetical citation. So, in case someone is not understanding me, what I'm saying by that is that a lot of people were doing things like, she said, I cannot believe you gave me roses, you bastard. Okay. All right. So some people were doing period, this, and then Jenkins, 43. And then they were from the next sentence. She told him years ago how she loved daisies. Okay. Oops. All right. People were doing this, and they were putting this period here because in the quotes in the book or the story, the essay, it had a period here. But the period should not go there. It should go after the parenthetical citation because the parenthetical citation is a part of the sentence. Or some people were doing this. They were having a period, and then they were having another period. That's also incorrect. Okay. Some people had a comma here because the quote naturally ended with a comma, or I'm sorry, the quote part of the quote that they used was up to the point where a comma was, and for whatever reason they included it. But this serves no purpose, so we get rid of that. All right, we get rid of that. And we save the period for the end. Okay, now you could say if you said Jenkins, the author, Jenkins said, I cannot believe you gave me roses, you bastard. Then, of course, we wouldn't have Jenkins here, and we would just have 43. Now, if this was a web source where there are no page numbers, there's no page numbers, okay, because it's from the web. You're looking on the web. There's nothing. Then, you could have the period here, and then you have the quotation mark because you would have no page number, and you have the author's name already in the sentence. So then you have nothing here. So the period can go there. But then there were also some people who were putting the period after the quotation mark, and that is incorrect. Okay. So if you don't have a parenthetical citation, the period goes inside the quotation mark. If you have a citation, the period goes after the citation. All right. I know these are annoyingly, specific. It takes time to remember this, which is why I provided the notes. So you can always go back and double check, like in which scenario does the period go inside the quotation mark, and in what instances does it go outside? All right. And grammar is one of those things that are super annoying and that you will be always continually working on throughout your entire life. I mean, I will text and I will send a text and then I'll reread it and be like, oh, damn, like I put that punctuation, which this shows my age because I put punctuation in my texts. My children make fun of me about that. But like I will edit my text because I realize I mispunctuated it. All right. And so, emails, I'll write emails and then I'll have to read back through it and realize, okay, I did not put the punctuation correctly. It's not natural. It's always secondary, and so it's just something that you just eventually, again, you just develop the ability to go back through and realize what you did wrong. So most people don't punctuate things the first time through, which is why they need to, after they've written their ideas out, they go back and they look at to see if their mechanics are correct. Okay, because again, I've discussed this before. Your brain functions two different ways. There's the creative mode, and then there's the rules mode. And when you are creating something new, meaning even an email is new, you are having to write an email that did not previously exist. So you are getting your ideas out. And then you go back and you apply your rules of grammar, your rules of language to make after your ideas are already out. And then you see if it's correct. Okay. So that's just sort of the process for everything. You write and then you go back through and you edit. Okay, so the end punctuation mark is inserted before the parenthetical citation. False. Question 9. The date in MLA formatting should be as followed. This, yes. Listen to me. I probably will never take points off if you do that differently. Okay. Before, years ago, when I first started, was this. It was January 27, 2025. And then at some point it changed to the date comes before. The date comes before. That one I'm least worried about. The header includes the last name and the page number. True. A lot of people did not put their last name and page number in the header of their strength or Irby assignment, and they lost points. Sorry. Yes, header. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. I don't really care. All right. Citations. For a source with an author whose last name is Wordsworth, the first name William, choose the correct parenthetical citation. So it's always last name and page number. But we don't put the PG for page number. So Wordsworth, 127. That's it. Don't put dates. APA puts dates. And there will be people, I know this for a fact.
I'm sorry. Can I
go
see
ahead.
the number 11? You went through it very fast.
Which one?
11.
11?
Yes. Fine.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was just sure. This is the correct heading. First and last name of yourself, my name, or your teacher's name, the course number or the course class, and then the due date. So that is, and then of course these would be double spaced. Okay, so this was correct because it has your first and last name, has the teacher's name, it has the class, and it has the date. While these are incorrect because this has the instructor's name first, so that's incorrect. This one has the date technically wrong. It's written incorrectly, so that's incorrect. And this one's missing the class number. So A is correct. For this one, number 12, we have Wordsworth and page number. If you use a digital source and there is no page number, then you leave it blank and you just have the last name. Wordsworth, and that's it. What I was saying before, another airplane, sorry, is that APA, they use dates because APA is the American Psychological Association, and most sciences use the APA style. And for science, dates matter. If you're talking about cancer, you need to know if they're talking about, are they citing research from 1975 about cancer? Or are they researching, using information from 2020? And that's because information about cancer in 1975 is probably not going to still be valid as today. So dates matter for science, but for literary analysis, talking about Freud's interpretation of the subconscious from 1917 can still be applicable and relevant to interpreting a character today using Freudian psychoanalysis. Okay, so analyzing Shakespeare from the 1800s can still be applicable to today. All right, so literary analysis is not as dependent on dates. So we don't include dates in the citation. Of course, you can talk about dates in your paper. I mean, I think I was talking to Mason, I think it was. You emailed me about historical feminism. So, like, if you're talking
Yes,
about,
sir.
cool. So, like, in your paper, mentioning dates is good, especially if you're talking about something that is an outdated perspective that at one time was held high, but today, by today's standards, would not be held high. Sure, you want to talk about dates in your paper, but you just don't put a date in your parenthetical citation. So if there is no page number listed, it should just be the last name of the person in parentheses, and that's it. Okay. If you Google how to cite something, you will see you will see some parenthetical citations with dates in them, but that is for APA citations, not MLA. There's a lot of different types of formatting styles. There's MLA, Chicago, APA, AP, which is Associated Press. So if you're ever Googling how to cite something, you got to make sure that you are asking about MLA, Modern Language Association. Okay, question 13. For a source with no author, the article, The Impact of Global Warming in North America, choose the correct parenthetical citation. Okay. Um, I guess D is correct. This says impact. I would have said normally, usually impact of global. Oh, okay, wait, I'm sorry. C is incorrect because it doesn't have any quotation marks. All right. So if you have a long title and there's no author, you put part of the title in the parenthetical citations within quotation marks because we always put the titles of articles in quotes. But for a parenthetical citation, if you have a long title, you don't need to put the whole title in there. You can just put in. Usually, it's the first 1 to 3 words. Okay, so in quotation marks. C would be acceptable if it had quotation marks around after the parentheses. If it was parentheses, quotation mark, impact of global warming, quotation mark, parentheses. That would be fine. Uh, but it doesn't. So here, D is correct because it's parentheses, quotation mark, impact, quotation mark, parentheses. Okay. Because seeing this would still make it easily, you still be able to find it easily on a works cited page. So the most important thing though is the quotation marks. If you did write in your paper, if you did put parentheses, quotation mark, and the whole title, quotation mark, parentheses, I probably would not mark that wrong because you did the most important thing, which is the quotation marks. The quotation marks is how you write a title of an article. So, yep. The title of your paper has to be in font 12 and cannot be bold, colored, highlighted, italicized, or underlined. Now, this is true. The only thing about the italicized part is if you are writing a title of a book in your title for your article, that can be italicized. The title of your paper in general shouldn't be italicized, but like if you're writing a paper on The Tommyknockers by Stephen King, and you title your paper Stephen King's The Tommyknockers, then here, let me just show you. And you can. Um, so titles are centered. Okay, so you could write Stephen King's The Tommyknockers. Okay. You could write The Tommyknockers if you're right about the book. Or you cannot though. Incorrect would be Stephen King's artistic legacy. This would be incorrect. You do not italicize a title in general. You italicize you can italicize a book's title as the title of your paper, okay, because that naturally should be in italics. Same thing with like if you did if you're writing your paper, if essay one is on, oops, Stephen King's Strawberry Spring, I gave you all the option for, then you can use quotation marks in your the title of the short story that you're writing about. Oops, let me do possession. But you would not do Stephen King's Strawberry Spring because you don't put quotation marks around the title of your paper. And the short story is not called Stephen King's Strawberry Spring. The short story is just Strawberry Spring. So this would be incorrect. Okay. You would not, if you underlined this, that would be incorrect. No underlining either. Sometimes people want to bold their title, and that is incorrect. These are all things I've done before in my papers in college too. Okay, and I got points off, so it is what it is. So,
I have a question.
yo, what's up?
Um, so in the outline, I just did where are you going, where have you been in quotations, and then outside of the quotations, I said outline. Should I have put Joyce Carol Oates, or is it okay that my title was just where are you going, where have you been?
That's fine. Sure.
Okay.
So this could just be sure. This could
It can
you
just
see
be
that. No problem. The only reason why I wrote Stephen King's is to show the distinction that like if I did write this, I would not have this italicized. I would only have this italicized because this is the name of the book, and books go in italics. Okay, so either one's fine. Strawberry Spring outline, totally fine. Okay, but you still need to capitalize your letters for your title. So this written like this, that would actually be incorrect because it's a title. And so the only thing we don't underline, I'm sorry, the only thing that we don't capitalize in titles are like prepositions. Okay. So if I said like oops, the use, oops. Oh, you little jerk. What am I doing? Okay, here we go. All right. So the use of okay, here. The misogyny um, and violence in Strawberry Spring. That's how it outline. Okay. Um, if I'm going to title my paper is going to be called this: "The Misogyny and Violence in Strawberry Spring." Okay. Then I'm gonna capitalize the big words. You don't capitalize words like "and" or "in." If I did the misogyny and the violence in Strawberry Spring, I wouldn't capitalize the T. You don't capitalize the conjunctions. You don't capitalize the small little words. All right. Um, so when you write your titles for your shorts, for your outlines, for your assignments, for your papers, okay, they should still apply to title kind of requirements, which was where we will have capital letters. The first word, you always have a capital letter. The big word, the long words, you have capital letters. For the articles, the little conjunction, the prepositions, we don't have capital letters. And then you still apply any type of rules of titling resources, as in articles or novels, in your title. Okay. So, does that make sense here, everybody? So, a version of this title that would be incorrect would be as followed. If I didn't capitalize, that would be incorrect. This is incorrect. Okay. All right. Let's try to wrap this one up so we can get to the next one. The source has more than two authors, which of the following is parenthetical citation. All right. Now, it has more than two authors. Yes, two authors. Yes. Wordsworth, et al. That's correct. If it's two authors like Wordsworth and Coleridge, then it would be here. I'm gonna move so that way y'all can. The sun's probably not. So the sun's not so shiny in your eyes. Um. Oh, I just had it on a cushion that was soaking wet. Oh, whew, okay. Refreshing. Um, then you would have Wordsworth and Coleridge if it has two authors. If it has more than two, Wordsworth and then ETAL. Okay. All right. That's it for this one. Any questions on these before I go over the next quiz? Great. Fantastic. Awesome. Quiz two. Okay. So I try to write, I try to write this quiz based upon everything I went over. Everything I went over, okay? If you found an error, I'm a pretty humble dude, okay? So I'll own up to it. You can let me know if there's a problem with it. Question one, which of the following citations is correct? All right. So the answer is obviously here. This is obviously the wait, this is not the correct answer. This is already wrong. Already this is wrong. Um okay, I'm already adding 1 point to y'all because A is incorrect because it should be Rapino Kristen. So we're gonna ignore that one. Here, let me highlight this. I can't highlight this. Um so for let's see. For citations, we have last name, oops, last name, and then first name. Okay. So in this case, we would have Kristen Rapino or Rapinian. I won't call it Rapino because I think so. Rapinian. Sorry if I misspelled that. Kristen. Period. All right. And then we would have cat person. So actually, so let's see. I think C should be the correct answer. Rapino Kristen. Period. Cat person's is in quotation marks. Then we have in italics arguing about literature. All right. And then we have where it was published and who did and the year. All right. So C is the answer for question one. I'll go back through and I might just give 10 points to everybody. I don't, it's like way too much work to see who got this one actually wrong or right. So instead, I'm just going to give everybody 10 points for question one. All right. So you may have any questions about why C is the correct answer. Okay. Question two. Now I don't trust any of these answers. Let's see. Which of the following sentences is correct? A successful adaptation in film is, quote, keeping to the heart of the original story, emphasizing the best features of the later work, and not changing anything fundamental to the original story. Baldwin period. Yes. Okay. So that one is absolutely correct. What makes B incorrect? Anybody?
You asked what makes D incorrect?
B. What makes B incorrect?
B.
Yeah.
Um, After is, we don't have. Okay, maybe I don't have. Maybe I'm not quite right to be the first one to comment this.
No, no, Blanca,
Because
go.
I asked you particularly a question, maybe somebody else will try. Yeah. Yeah.
No. What
In
were
the
you gonna
name of
say?
fairness. Yeah.
What were you gonna say after is?
We are not supposed to have capital letter over there.
Right. After this is, this K should not be capitalized. So D is incorrect. What makes C incorrect? Somebody?
It says Baldwin twice.
It says Baldwin twice. That's right. Okay.
And there's a second error, I think. After is, there's no comma.
Well, in this case, you don't need a comma after this is. So this
Oh,
is we
okay.
don't need a comma because it's integrated to make it sound seamless. And so in this case, we don't need a comma after is right here. And we have this lowercase k, which is correct. But Baldwin is mentioned twice. It's here and here. And D is incorrect because it does both errors. It capitalizes this K and it has Baldwin twice. So,
Yeah.
so A is correct. 3. Which option correctly integrates the quote? Integrates the quote. So here we have C is the answer. According to Freud, comma, interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind, comma, and the iceberg analogy effectively illustrates this concept. Okay, so what makes C correct, and what makes let's see here. What makes A incorrect?
Is C correct? Because after you have a comma, aren't you supposed to have the first letter capitalized? I don't think C
No,
is correct, is it?
because here in this case, Freud is not our verb.
Okay. So you can
So
have a comma and not capitalize the next letter?
right. If it's not being followed by a verb. So it has to be a verb and a comma together. Like Freud often said, this right here, I can't highlight the PDF. Freud often said, comma, then we would have a capital D. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. Then we have our verb and we have our comma here.
Yeah.
B, we have Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams, comma. And then we have the interpretation of dreams, the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. And the iceberg analogy effectively illustrates this concept. What's wrong with B?
We don't need the comma after dreams.
Well, Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road. The problem is you
And that
can't. Yes.
let me guess. Let me see if I think whatever you agree or not. I think that the style of the sentence itself is incorrect because it like you're losing the logic of the whole sentence, and like you're missing a part. This is the sense that I have when I read the sentence. The sentence after dreams and the citation after that.
Okay. Well, there is something about right after dreams. So with this first part, we have a complete sentence. Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams. Period. That's a complete sentence. The interpretation, now we have the quote, the interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. That's a complete sentence also. And then we have, and the iceberg analogy effectively illustrates this concept. All right. The iceberg analogy effectively illustrates this concept, the complete sentence, because we have a subject, which is a thing that's doing something. Freud is a noun that is performing a verb. Freud developed. Okay. Freud developed. So all you need for a complete sentence is a noun that's performing a verb. Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams. Period. So this period right here, this comma right here, should be a period, unless you add a conjunction. A conjunction links two independent sentences together. All right. Which is evident here with the iceberg analogy, effectively illustrates this concept. So at the end of this sentence, Freud develops psychoanalysis the way to analyze dreams. There should be a period. Then you could have a capital T. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind, comma. And then you have a conjunction that links it to this second sentence, part of the sentence. And then you would need to have you would actually need to have because this comma will turn to a period, you would then have to have a parenthetical citation at the end of concept after concept. All right. A lot of people.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a question for this.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt. My question is, I read these and I separated them as two separate sentences, as one whole idea, as one whole sentence. And every time, the sense that I have is there something is missing to link these two sentences, because
Right.
the speech doesn't go flawless.
Yeah, I think what's missing is the conjunction, or the quote could be better integrated in a different way. So sometimes sometimes we have what's called like awkward phrasing, where you're trying to say, you have three things you're trying to say, but they're not organized succinctly, or they're not organized in a logical way, or in this case, they're not grammatically linked together correctly. And so, and these are all student examples of things that students have written. And so, with the person who wrote B, I would say is that they would need to, one easy way to fix this is replacing this comma with a period, capitalizing the T, and then adding a parenthetical citation here. A lot of people are leading into their quotes with complete sentences. People are writing complete sentences and then putting a comma and then putting the quote. And that's incorrect. That's incorrect because a comma cannot separate two complete sentences without having some sort of conjunction. We should be able to delete. If you delete the quote, so let's see here. Let's see. Can I edit this? Oops. Okay, no. Let me just write it then. So my tip is, if you can delete the quote and there is no evidence of that quote, then it is not integrated correctly. Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right. Who wrote Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams, comma, the interpretation of dreams I'm just going to shorten this a little bit. Discovery. And the iceberg. All right, I just kind of shortened this a little bit just for the sake of this. I need to get my charger. All right, so let's say this. So here we have Freud develops psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams. The interpretation of dreams is the railroad to discovery. And the iceberg will eventually melt the mind. Okay. Okay, here is the railroad to, hold on, to discovery of the subconscious iceberg. Okay. So if this is our quote, okay, and I can delete it, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to delete it, and the sentence still makes sense. Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams, and the iceberg will eventually melt the mind. It's so grammatically it still makes sense, even if you're like, well, what is the iceberg? If this, let's say I want to separate, if I want to put this into a complete sentence, so this is a complete sentence here, and then I delete this. All right. So now we know that the quote is partially integrated, is integrated in the second part, because here we have, and the iceberg will eventually melt the mind. So that does make sense, because the and after a period tells us that something was there, and now something is missing, which means that part of the quote for this part of the sentence is integrated. But because we can delete it from this first part, and Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams, is still a complete sentence that tells us the quote is not fully integrated. And so we can't just have a comma here. So we could say Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams and found that interpretation of dreams is the railroad to discovery of the subconscious iceberg. Okay. Yeah. So by adding found that, this now makes
sense.
Integrated, because if I deleted the quote, it would not make any sense. We would have Freud developed psychoanalysis as a way to analyze dreams and found that, and the iceberg will eventually melt the mind. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. The quote is an essential part of the sentence in order for it to be grammatically correct and to make sense. So we have to make sure, which is why, again, you cannot lead into a quote with a complete sentence, because that does not make that quote a fully functional part of that sentence. All right, I'm gonna get my charger, or actually I might just move inside now. So that way my computer won't die. All right. Hold on, y'all, 1 second. So that's kind of complex, but it is something that I've been noticing a lot of people doing. We're by one assignment. We only had one assignment, but still, I want to nip in the bud. Okay. You cannot integrate quotes by just putting them at the end of a complete sentence with a comma. All right. Here, so let's see. D is good, other than the fact that it has Freud mentioned twice. Freud believed that the interpretation of dreams is the railroad to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. If it ended with a period, that would be correct. But it did not end with a period. It ended with Freud, and Freud's already mentioned. Therefore, D is incorrect. let's see here. Okay, while staying loyal to the original work of an author is important, comma, it is also possible for a film to create what Grail calls imaginative dissonance, to create a new experience while also following the original book. Adams, period. Okay. This one tests changing. Really, this tests a lot of different things. Okay. A is incorrect because it doesn't use correct brackets. It uses these squigglies, right? And it also uses ellipses that we do not need. C is incorrect because we have a quote that's by itself. We have, while staying loyal to the original work of an author is important, and understanding for creative innovation and adaptation is a major key to enjoying a movie adaptation of a book, period, comma, quotation mark. And then we have this complete quote. This is what we call a drop quote. This quote is just dropped in. It's not integrated. It's incorrect. Again, there's a lot of people who would have just had a comma instead of a period here. They would have this complete sentence, have a comma, and then have this quote. That's incorrect. We have to integrate the quote. This one's incorrect. Let's see. Oh, because it did what I just said. It replaced the period with a comma. And this comma cannot integrate a quote by itself. Okay? Now, D could very easily become correct if they added, I think, just one word. Yeah, you could add one word into D, and it would make it correct. What's the one word? It's a conjunction.
That might sound dumb, but and?
Fantastic. That's exactly right. Okay. Yes. If you, after the comma, all you have to do is add and then change the capital W to a lowercase w, and then it would be completely correct. So here you go. While staying loyal to the original work of an author is important, an understanding for creative innovation and adaptation is a major key to enjoying a movie adaptation of a book. And while directors should maintain some accountability to the overall plot, it is also possible for a film to create what Grell calls imaginative dissonance, to create a new experience while also following the original book. Adams, period. That is a complete, now it's a complex sentence, but it's completely grammatically correct. You've integrated a quote. You led into that quote with a total complete sentence, a complex sentence, and then connected it to a long quote, and all you had to do was add a comma and the word and. Okay, and D would have been totally correct. And then a lowercase w. All right, so yes,
Mr. Gibby, if I can wrap up whatever we said until this moment about citations and logical sequence of the sentences in a text, I would say what I apply to myself is either I put shorter sentences or I use something like a transition word or phrase between, let's say, my words and the citation.
yeah,
Is this like a correct way to think about the how to put my thoughts in written in MLA format?
sure, yeah, transitional words, that's right. Go from your words and
Shorter sentences, which also I think works well.
I say yes, if that works, and using shorter sentences, you're able to connect them to and integrate quotes correctly, then yes, I would, like I would choose a style that is authentic to you as a person and that allows you the most success. So if you realize that you make less errors and that you write better quality work by being more succinct and shorter, then do that. If you feel um, that you can, that you are a wordy person and that you're more long-winded, like I am, then and writing that way helps you to communicate your ideas more clearly and thoughtfully, then do that. Don't try to ascribe to the style of what you think your reader wants. Instead, you should adopt a style that gets you the best output, gets you the best grade, and that allows you to communicate the best for yourself, and your abilities, and that helps you to make sense of the rules of grammar. So yeah. So I mean, like if I was talking to a person who had a really hard time with kind of like comprehending conjunctions and commas, then I would say stick to short sentences. So yeah. Does that answer your question, Blaga?
Yes, that answers my question. Yes, but also, even though if you're analyzing somebody else's work, even though in this case you have personal emotions implied in this work, and sometimes, yeah, I mean, yeah, these are different approaches that could be used. And I asked the question because I think that it's not applicable only to me. It could be helpful to anybody um, in the class, let's say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think questions being asked benefit many people, definitely types of people. I think there's plenty of people who have questions or have thoughts that they don't express and that other people do. So I agree. I think asking questions is always beneficial to the herd.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm. Um, Question 5: What are the errors in the below example? So we have Elliot Smith, Mr. Byers, English 1102, 28 April 2004, The Devil Wears Prada, Marxist Critique in Books vs. Film. And then we have this paragraph, The Devil Wears Prada, originally written by Lauren Weisberger and later adapted into a film directed by David Frankel, follows Andrea Sachs, who was hired as an assistant to the fashion magazine editor, Miranda Priestley. Both the film and the book follow Andrea's journey to become the next Tom Wolfe, but instead to work in the demanding fashion industry, confronting all of its challenges and transformations. Across mediums, Andrea's story serves as a Marxist critique of capitalist exploitation within the fashion world, highlighting the broader societal issues. Okay, so here I could ask you what is wrong, but the answer is already there in front of you, so there's no point in asking that question. The title of the book is written incorrectly. Yes. The Devil Wears Prada should be written how?
Italics, not quotations.
Yes, it should be in italics. It should be slanted, not in quotation marks, because it's a book. It's a book and also a film title. Books and films and albums of music albums, uh, newspaper titles, newspaper or magazine titles. These are all in italics, not quotation marks. Quotation marks are for short stories, essays, articles, songs, poems. Okay, they are in quotes, so this should be in italics. 6. Which of the following is correct? The gliders are exploited for their labor as they are tasked with navigating the maze because the oppressor believes that this experiment is worth a sacrifice to preserve humanity. Vitria, period. Okay, this one's correct because it doesn't capitalize first letter of the quote because it doesn't need to. With navigating the maze, okay, we don't need to capitalize B because this is not being followed by a verb and a comma. B, which makes B's incorrect because it capitalizes B. This B does not need to be capitalized because we don't have a comma and we don't have a verb. The gliders are exploited for their labor as they are tasked with navigating the maze. Thus, it is continued by the. All right, and then we have the quote. Hey, this is an example of what a lot of people do. Well, somewhat earlier, we have a complete sentence. The gliders are exploited for their labor as they are tasked with navigating the maze. That is a complete sentence. And then we have a quote. Thus, it is continued by the explanation that conflict occurs in this novel because the oppressor believes that this experiment is worth a sacrifice to preserve humanity. That is a complete sentence. We have two complete sentences combined with just a comma. Incorrect. There's a conjunction with the comma, an and, but, therefore, then it'll be fine. But there is no conjunction. It's only a period. I'm sorry, it's only a comma, and that's a problem. All right. This is a
I wouldn't, if it's me, I
Yep.
wouldn't put conjunction. I would put comma because otherwise it will be it wouldn't sounds well in the style wouldn't be good because and thus it is. I mean, these two words doesn't go together very well. This is my opinion. Is it correct? Do you think so?
let's see.
I mean, my first choice would be to separate these sentences.
Yes, I would separate the two sentences. I would separate them. Um, it is continued by the explanation that conflict occurs. I would shorten it. The gliders are exploited for their labor as they are tasked with navigating the maze. And let's see, and the conflict occurs in this novel because the oppressor believes that this experiment is worth a sacrifice to preserve humanity. I would shorten it. I'd get rid of thus. It is continued by the explanation that, and I would get to the conflict. I would begin my quote with the conflict. The gliders are exploited for their labor as they are tasked with navigating the maze. And the conflict, and I would still use a conjunction, probably, and put and, the, and then do the quote. Conflict occurs in this novel because the oppressor believes that this experiment. So I would still use a conjunction, but I would shorten the quote to get to the conflict part of the sentence.
Absolutely, yeah.
That would make it correct.
This is the best way, yeah. Thank you.
Yes. And again, this is incorrect because period is incorrect because now we have what's called a dropped quote. We have just a quote as a complete sentence. So that is incorrect. We cannot have a quote by itself that is not integrated. 7. Which of the following is correct? So 7, the pursuit of pleasures doesn't mean indulgences, but rather what creates the most balanced life. Okay, so this is correct because the idea is that the quote came from an article with no name, but with no author's name, and the article is called Hedonism. We don't put unknown. We don't put Wikipedia or Newsweek or Psychology Today. You don't put the publishing. You don't put where it was the quote was published. You put the title of the article or the entry. D is incorrect because if you have a quotation mark, you got to have a citation. And then B and C these are the wrong citations. So A is the only one that can be correct. It is the title of an article called Hedonism that is, whose author is unknown because it was probably published on an encyclopedia or a philosophy website, and the page is called Hedonism. Question 8. Karl Marx spent his life discussing how capital is dead labor, which, vampire-like, lives only by sucking living labor and lives the more labor it sucks. Okay, Marx, boom. Is the following sentence written correctly? So we have No, no, yes. No, because the first word in the quote should be capitalized. That's incorrect. This is fine. No, because it doesn't need a parenthetical citation since the author has already been mentioned. Marx, Marx, correct. Yes, because it has a quote and a parenthetical citation. No, because the quote is not integrated correctly. The quote is integrated correctly. The C does not need to be capitalized. It shouldn't have Marx here because Marx is mentioned here. So therefore, B is the answer. We don't state the author of the quote twice. Okay, two more. Number 9, which of the following sentences is correct? This is about titling a short story. Kristen Rabinian's short story. There's the context clue, the short story. A lot of people, this right here, this cat person in italics and quotation marks, I saw this many times in the Samantha Irby assignment. A lot of people, when they were writing the title of the shorts of the show, of the essay that they were that they read and discussed, they did we almost got a dog in italics. They put the title of the essay in italics and in quotation marks. That's incorrect. So it needs to only be, if it's a short story, an article, a song, or a poem, it goes in quotation marks, and that's it. Okay. If it's the title of the book, a film, a TV show, a newspaper like Time or the New York Times, it goes in italics. Nothing should ever be in italics and quotation marks, either quotation marks or italics. And then question 10, the last one. Which of the following is correct? So this one's correct. In the book, writing comments. So this is almost like the same question, just in reverse now about books. In the book, writing comments. Incorrect, because it should not be, it should be in italics. In the book, writing comments. It should be in just italics, not in quotation marks. In the book, it should not be in quotation marks. It should be in italics, because books are in italics. Okay. Okay. So those are the answers and the explanations for quiz 2. Some of you have already taken quiz 3. I haven't looked at any of the scores. Okay. All the, everything for quiz 3 is based on, I might have repeated some of the skills, but most of it is on citations, sources. Okay. Citations and sources. I know for a fact I have some questions about which of the following sources can be used in your paper and which ones can't be used. So you need to make sure that you are using the PowerPoint this week's PowerPoint, and you might still need week 2's PowerPoint to help you with that quiz. Okay. All right. So we've been on for an hour, a little bit more than an hour. Before I end it, I would, yes, if you might have any questions.
I have one question.
Okay, Amanda?
Okay, so I hope you can hear me.
I can, totally.
Okay, so it's I was looking at the outline, and first of all, before I forget, I'm a bit confused with the difference between what's that called? Existentialism and existentialist. I've Googled, I've tried to research. It tells me that existentialist is like a direct, like a smaller, my own words now, like a small existentialism is like a broader philosophy like around it, but they're both talking about the same thing, but existentialist is specifics. But it doesn't say specifics of what. How do I know? Because those are the two things that I want to use because they relate to the story, but I do not know how to differentiate. So I can write specific to existentialist and specific to existentialism. You know what I mean? That's one question. Then the second.
Are you saying these two words, an existentialism
Oh yeah, thank you.
and an existentialist?
Yes. I know this one has spiritual. You put it spiritual slash, yeah, the one, yeah,
So
in the,
um, these are pretty broad terms. Generally, so existentialist is existentialism. So existentialism, sure. And then you're talking about existential. Yeah, no, no. Like both of them are essentially the same. The idea is about like how do we exist on Earth? Now, there are atheist existentialists. An existentialist is just a person who practices or who thinks about or analyzes their life through existentialism. And sometimes we say things like we have an existential crisis, which just means that the root of that is how we exist on Earth. And existentialists, traditional existentialism looks at life in a more skeptical kind of and pessimistic way that like there is no purpose to life. There is, sometimes we feel that like that people sometimes are motivated by this idea that like there's purpose and truth and meaning and everything, and that everything was meant to happen for a reason. Some people believe in like karma, and some people believe that that whatever is meant to be is supposed to be meant to be, and that God has a plan. And traditionally, existentialists don't believe that. They don't believe they're what we call like skeptics in terms of meaning in life and purpose in life, and that we have to make our own meaning in life. Um, and that there's this idea of like actively abiding by your choices and living your life to the way that like you feel. Sometimes, we have this idea that like that there's order in our world and that we're meant to be these orderly beings, and that we have governments and we have society and we have these sort of like cultural expectations. And at the core, existentialists don't believe that's not by nature, and that you have to decide how you're going to live your life, and that there is no one doctrine of truth. There's not one thing that you can adopt to give you meaning, because ultimately life is meaningless, and so you have to kind of create it for yourself. So that's at the core of existentialism. Now we can look at things like spiritual existentialism, where like this guy Kierkegaard, who said that okay, God exists. There's a greater power than us, but we are not it, and we are separated from it, and we don't actually know anything. And so you might be able to. And so sometimes this causes like a crisis of faith. You have this idea of religion, but then ultimately we are divided from that. So then we have to find meaning in this world within our own interpretations.
so if I
Well,
understand what sorry to cut you short.
no,
If
no,
I
go ahead.
understand what you're saying this, just pardon me, my pronunciation, I don't know. The least, the one that the bigger one, existentialism,
Mm-hmm.
is more like everything that happened. I'm just going to use your word. Everything happens for a purpose. Like there's a greater belief that God has a plan and all that. So like that's that, like the umbrella of it, what you're saying. And then the existentialist now narrows it down to individual understanding or belief, that not necessarily that they believe that God has a plan or there's a bigger being, but what they believe is they are in control of their own life and they decide how to live their life, basically. That's what you're saying. That's the difference.
Well, the big umbrella is that existentialism is that there is no meaning.
There is no what?
There is no inherent meaning to life. or if there is, we don't know it ultimately. And that you can decide to accept these things if you feel they're good, but you should not accept things based on people just telling you things. So like, so like, listen to this. America. Okay, we say things like capitalism is good. Our government is democracy. Our democracy is the best on earth. The police are here to keep us safe and orderly. And so, like, you can grow up and live your life in America and just accept all these things that you're told about the system and trust it and just be okay, all right. An existentialist would say nothing is inherently good. Okay, there is no naturally made perfect system anywhere. Okay, you tell me the church is would save my soul and that I should abide by it. You tell me the government is going to take care of me. You tell me that I'll have a good life if I get educated, I get a job, pay my taxes, I buy my cars, I contribute, then I'll be happy. You tell me these things, but I don't necessarily believe those things. I don't know if that's true. That doesn't mean that they're not true, and that doesn't mean I'm gonna go blow up the government and or not work or not go to church. But like, I cannot accept these things on blind faith because I don't know if these exist. These are really real. So I have to live my life and decide and choose what I accept and what I don't accept. I will trust the government if they're worthy of trust. I will maybe go to this church if I believe that they're actually good people. I might get a job if that makes me happy, but I can also choose not to have these safe routes. Instead, all those things could actually make me miserable, and I would need to go out and figure out what makes me happy. So, existentialists, existentialism, they are skeptical. They're skeptical of systems created by humans, and they doubt. They doubt these systems, and they want to find and develop their own understandings of what is authentic, what is real, what creates real freedom. Should we always be happy, or is it more human to not always be happy? You know, so they question all that kind of stuff. So existentialism, existentialist, they are under the same umbrella in which they are skeptical of truths. They're skeptical of truths, and some don't believe in any of these values that society tries to put on them. Others just try to explore and to determine for themselves what is real and what is not real.
Okay, thank you so much. The second question. I don't want to take up your time or every other person. The second one, I noticed the example of the outline that you posted and the template, they're not exactly the same. I just want to be sure that it's actually how you meant it. So I'll point you to like the number 2,
On
I
the
think,
outline or the example?
of the example and the template. I just want to, there's a difference. I want to be sure it's not my mistake, or I don't know. You have under the number 2, you have D and E in the example, but on the template, there's no D and E. So when I looked at the rest of them, I saw, okay, they are not all having the same thing that the example is having. So is that by design, or?
I think it just came from so we have the outline. Let me see. Let me just pull it up so I can look at it.
Let me point like the D in number 2, it says secondary source, and E is of course where you put in the writer's name or something, but in the template it ends at the C, which is code for the primary source.
Mm-hmm.
So that's and then I noticed similar things going on the rest of them.
Okay,
So
so
I'm
this is
like, okay,
part.
maybe you took out, so you probably took out some, or you didn't.
This part. So is this under the explain the critical lens portion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So then, so then we have, where is this? Oh, it's week 2. Okay. So here I have a quote from secondary source 2, and then I have my symbol. Then I have a quote from my primary source. And then so it's just because I added the author. So it did that because as I was writing in the template, when you go to another line, it just naturally creates um, another row. So
No.
let me see.
If you go, okay, look at, you see,
Okay,
it ends
okay.
in C. Do you understand? It doesn't have those two. So I'm just like, okay, maybe you just want us to do for the quotes from
The
secondary
critical
source,
lens,
symbol and
the
quotes from
quotes,
primary
a
source.
quotes, author, author, symbol, symbol, a quote, and then
I can point out a difference that I saw
I think
between the
so.
outline and the example.
Okay, I think I just added a secondary quote, another quote. I just had 2 quotes.
Okay, so we
Um,
don't have to, going by the template.
Quote from secondary source 2, and then a symbol, and then a quote from primary source. Okay, then I just added another quote on my example. So
Yes, I understand. I'm
I
just saying,
right.
so we
Yeah.
don't
So
need it.
I have on the example, I have the bare minimum,
Mhm.
but sometimes you might feel that you want to add more. So you can add more to your, as long as you have the bare minimum. And then example of school philosophy. Okay. Secondary source 3. Okay. So I mean, as you're writing, you might feel that you need to add that you have more to say.
Mhm.
So you can add to it. If Because I mean, you are right. I gave you an outline. It's kind of like, I don't want you to have fewer than what I've asked for, but at the same time, I'm not going to be so rigid in terms of saying if you have in addition, as long as whatever you have in addition is done correctly in terms of like grammar, integration, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, it's so much to write, so I don't want to write extra.
Oh yeah, you
It's
don't.
so,
Yeah, yeah. You don't have to. You don't have to. I was just showing you. Um, in some areas I don't like. Look here, theme, quote, same quote from primary source. That same. There's nothing extra in that paragraph. Quote. Yeah. So you know, sometimes you got more to say. Sometimes you don't.
thank you.
Hmm.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
I wanted to gain clarity on what time the live lecture is on Fridays.
Clarity on time. I
Yeah.
mean, the lectures on Fridays will be kind of somewhat. I mean, between 9 and 10. So um last week I did 10 o'clock, but so long in the past, I've not had a whole lot of students involvement. So the 10 o'clock, and then I'm done around 10:30. Last week we went longer, and I can tell we're gonna have more people involved. So I want to have them earlier. And so this week I decided to have it at 9 o'clock. So we'll probably be doing them at 9 o'clock from this point forward.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
But, I mean, so I imagine probably just because since this one's been an hour and a half, probably we'll do it next week again at 9 o'clock rather than 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay. Who else has a question?
I have a question. About how to integrate a quote. So I'm doing the Hills Like White Elephants, which is mostly dialogue, and I'm confused about how to integrate like a dialogue piece into my paper. Wait, when it like I'm just gonna like tell you what it is so that you can like it's like the end part where she's like, I'm fine, I have nothing to worry about, like I'm fine. But it's like it starts with dialogue and then it says she said and then it does dialogue again. And I don't know how to integrate that, like when you're supposed to use like the quotation marks and then like the singular one.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. So, a couple different things. If I'm going to show you two different examples. All right. Um, if you are doing something like this, where say you said you want to quote her, you want to quote the girl saying, "Can we maybe stop talking?" And then um, uh, we get description, we get narration from the author. Okay. They sat down at the table, and the girl looked across the hills on the dry side of the valley, and the man looked at her and at the table. Okay. So let's say you want to do this. Okay. Right. Something like Hemingway, as the story progresses, or as the story progresses, Big develops a greater sense of power, uh, um, pushing her to tell the American. So here you would have a quotation mark, and then you would have singular apostrophe. Can we maybe just stop talking? Um, Singular quotation, okay? All right. Um, and then and aloud, you know, so that's a so she could ponder as she then quote as she looks, changing this word, looks across the hills on the dry side of the valley. While the American realizes he is losing his control over her as he he quote looks at her and at the table. Okay. Okay. So here we would have, as the story progresses, Jig develops a greater sense of power, pushing her to tell the American, quote, quotation mark, and then singular. Can't we maybe just stop talking? Singular, quote. So she could ponder as she, quote, looks across at the hills and the dry side of the valley while the American realizes he is losing. Look across oops, quotation mark. While the American realizes that he is losing his control over her as he looks at her. Okay. So you would have if you're quoting one line from her or him, you would have quotation mark, singular, singular, and then quotation mark. Okay. Um, or you could say, in the following excerpt, Hemingway demonstrates how how Big gains power over the American. In this case, we can have a colon. Sometimes you can lead into a quote. One time per paper, you can lead into the quote with a colon. A colon allows you to have a complete sentence moving into a quote. Okay. So in this case, I said, in the following excerpt, Hemingway demonstrates how Jig gains power over the American. Now, this is this is still kind of a short quote, so we won't necessarily have a block quote. So then here you would have quotation mark, singular apostrophe, delete this quotation mark, singular apostrophe, and then at the end, we don't have a page number because it's a PDF. So then we have a quotation mark there. So in this case, you have, in the following excerpt, Hemingway demonstrates how Jig gains power over the American, colon, quotation mark, apostrophe, can't we maybe stop talking, question mark, apostrophe. They sat down at the table, and the girl looked across at the hills on the dry side of the valley, and the man looked at her at the table, quotation mark. Okay, so we have a quote within a quote. Now, for your story in particular, and there's another story that's kind of like this as well. Where did I put this? Where did the story go? Hills like white elephants. That wasn't a. Let's say you want to do a series of responses back and forth. Okay. Okay. I love this line that she says. Would you please, 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 please stop talking? Our boy, our girl. Yep. All right. So now you're going to have, if you were going to quote a series of back and forth, okay, then you would do something like this. In the following exchange, we'll do. In the following exchange, Hemingway demonstrates how Jig gains power over the American. Here now we will have what's called a block quote, where you're going to block it out. You're going to indent it essentially, but then you're going to do you're going to start with a quotation mark and then do apostrophe. Then you would replace these with just apostrophes because this is within the large chunk that you are quoting. And then you would end it with a quotation mark and an apostrophe. Okay. So then if you have a series of back and forths, you would not do a back because this is the way it's written in the text. Because when you go to the text, it's in these individual lines like this. That's how you want to write it as well in your paper if you're having an exchange. And so you don't have them back to back. You don't have them on the same line, but you still then replace the quotation marks with apostrophes because it's quotes within a quote. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Great. All right. Anybody else? I'm going to save this document and I'm going to post it as week 2 live lecture notes, just in case you want any of this stuff right here. Now, I'm not going to add any explanation to it. So for anybody who did not necessarily watch all this, you might not know what it is that these refer to, but if you're here, if you know, you know. Okay. So.
Hi, Mr. Byers.
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm not done with the assignment, and I'm sure I want to believe a lot of people that aren't as well. And today, unfortunately, is Friday. I'm asking if between today and tomorrow, or can we email you in case we run into problems? And
yeah,
I mean, can we
okay.
email? Would you be able to answer?
Yeah. I will. So here's the thing: is that if when y'all email me, if your answer, if I can just type you your answer, like tell you the answer without having to pull any workup, then I can just wherever I am, I can tell you this with my phone. And like it's summertime, I'm with my kids. My wife works from home. I keep them active while she works. We're outside playing. We're going places like today. We're going to the mall. I'm taking my kids, and so I don't ever mind like just being in line and like replying. I get it. Your emails on my phone. I can just shoot you back. No problem. Um, Sometimes
You're
y'all ask
breaking
things.
up, so I'm struggling to hear you.
Oh no, I'm breaking up. Ooh, I'm sorry. Um, yes, you can always
Hello?
ask me. Hello? Can y'all not hear me? Can anybody else hear me? Am I breaking
We
up
can hear you.
all? Okay, you can
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. It's fine.
Okay, great. So you can always email me. If I cannot answer your question on my phone because
Mm.
like someone asked me for a video and I had to go into my YouTube studio and find it, and it was just easier to do on my computer. I just told them I'm out. I will totally get you this video when I get back to my house. If you send me a document, I generally can't read that on my phone. I would probably just
Mm.
wait till I get home to then give you feedback. If you want to, if you want to copy and paste what you're doing
Mm.
and put it,
Okay. Mm.
yeah. So sure, you can always email me any questions. Anybody else? Okay. Is everyone good? Are we good for wrapping this thing up?
Good.
Good.
Sounds
Cool.
like
I was like, what?
I mean, I think we're good.
All right, great. Okay, good. Well then, in the meantime, you can, like I've already said, you can send me emails. You can give me you can copy and paste what you're doing and say, am I doing this correct? And I'll just say yay or nay. No problem. All right. And if you have problems with the way I grade your stuff, you can always send me an email and I'll always give you an explanation. Okay. Cool. Well, y'all have a great Friday and weekend, and I will see you virtually via either email or my lecture that I'll post Monday morning.
Thank you, Mr. JB. Have a wonderful weekend. A
Yes,
lot of
you.
plays with your kids.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
do.
you,
We'll
sir.
do. No
Thank you.
problem, y'all. Yep. Peace out.